Alrighty, welcome back to the College Baseball Show. We are in full swing of college baseball previews here. We just hit you with the mid-major previews last week, and now we are finally getting into the conferences. We are about a month away from the college baseball season. Everything's getting kicked into full gear. We got conference previews, we got top 25s, we got preseason All-Americans, just kind of content coming your way. So be sure that you are subscribed to the YouTube channel, download any of the podcast platforms that you use, so that way you're not missing anything that we have coming down the pipe here. But Will, how's it going, man? How are things?
Great. I'm really excited to talk about the Sun Belt. I mean, we talk about this conference all the time as essentially being a P5 conference, and they really are. I mean, all these Power 5 conferences, sure, the bottom might struggle at times, but this is a conference that I've kind of beat the drum on in terms of needing more than two teams in. Last year, we saw two teams, both of which getting hosts, and the list stopping there. I think we're going to start to see the tide turn a little bit more as we continue to get deeper into really good mid-major baseball, and I'm excited to break down this whole conference.
Yeah, I mean, this is a conference, like you said, historically has been good in the past. You have your kind of top three at the top of Coastal Carolina, Southern Miss, and Troy. But then it's like you see some of the changes that Marshall's making. You see some of the change, like Louisiana's got a history of being good in the past. James Madison, even themselves, have been 30-plus win teams in the past. So this conference has good baseball. And then Texas State, that's another program that's also turning it around. They have a lot of talent, and it's going to be exciting to talk about. We're basically going to go through some the team rankings that we have in the Sun Belt, and then we're also going to go through some player coach superlatives. So like player of the year, best pitcher, breakout stars. We'll cover a little bit of our conference all team. For every podcast that we're doing a conference preview of, there will be a subsequent article that will go along with it that has write-ups on teams to watch, our projected conference champion, and we'll also have the entire all preseason all conference team listed out there. So trying to make it a little bit more interactive here for you to give you a podcast based off of some of those articles. So let's just dive right into the teams of the conference. So you are starting us off with Old Dominion University here, Will.
Yeah, I'm going to kick us off with ODU coming off of a 21-win season. Things are not bright right now for ODU, to say the least. You know, I think they're heading in the right direction, though. They are returning half of their offense from last year. I think they're going to struggle in terms of what they bring back on the mound. Dylan Brown for them was really, really good. He was one of those guys that they gave the ball to early on in series and put together a solid year, 102 strikeouts in 82 innings. He felt like the one guy in that rotation that was like, give him the ball, he'll walk away with a win. But they're going to be replacing a lot of stuff. However, on offense, they are returning their top two bats, which I'm excited for. Zach Lee and Maverick Stallings. Stallings put together an 887 OPS last year, led the team in home runs with only 9, but still 9 home runs. And Zach Lee was the only player on the Monarchs last year to hit over 300 / 343, 461, and 497. I think this is a program that's probably going to take a step in the right direction. I kind of struggle believing that they're only going to win 20 games again. It's just going to be a matter of that pitching. Like, how consistent can they get the pitching? The rotation for them was kind of their staple, and the offense really struggled last year. I think a lot of these guys on offense are going to take another step forward. So it's just going to be a matter of if they can piece together enough series through the pitching side.
Yeah, and I mean, Old Dominion, as kind of talk about like teams that have produced major leaguers. Old Dominion's one of them, like Justin Verlander, Vinny Pasquantino, I think Daniel Hudson, Ryan Yarbrough, like all these guys went to Old Dominion. Matt Quatraro, who's the manager of the Royals, also an Old Dominion alum as well. So there's a history there of Old Dominion being decent at baseball. So we'll see if they can kind of turn it around. I'm going to dive into, I believe, James Madison University. Here's a team last year that also things were not so bright. Won 17 games, lost 38, 10-20 in the conference. This team's not far removed from success. They were 36-25 in 2024, and also 31-25 in 2023. And then in 2022, they had a first rounder and Chase DeLauder on their team. So they've, again, in this Virginia area, you notice there's a lot of baseball teams that do have a lot of success. James Madison's one of them. The one guy I'll kind of highlight here, you look at the offensive side, I won't really talk too much about there. They lost a lot of guys, and a lot of, I think the best returner hit 247. So they have a little bit that they need to do on the offensive side to get things kicked back into gear. But Max Cooley, I think this is how you pronounce it, Kuhle. Most of this rotation, again, also like the offensive side, was decimated, but Max returns, went 56 innings, struck out 62 batters, and posted a 4.02 ERA. Notched 3 saves for this team, but so served kind of more in that closer role, but also got 5 starts for them. I got to imagine that he's going to work his way into the rotation. So that's a guy you should be watching out for on James Madison.
Yeah, absolutely. And these bottom teams in the Sun Belt, I don't want to, make it come across as if it's bad baseball. It's still good baseball. We were actually just talking pre-show. A lot of these schools lost players in the conference. There's a lot of transfers that stayed in the Sun Belt. We're going to talk about some guys, especially from this next school that I'm going to talk about, Georgia State. They're losing a big arm to Coastal Carolina. We've seen USM take some guys from in the Sun Belt. So there are some top players all the way through this conference that have actually stayed in conference, which I think is a really fascinating wrinkle within the transfer portal. Is you're seeing guys almost just make jumps within conferences, not necessarily jumping Sun Belt to SEC. But with that, I'm going to jump into Georgia State here. Another team that's losing a lot of pitching. They're losing their top 2 starters, one of which in Ross Norman, who I'll dive into later. He transferred to Coastal Carolina. They do bring back Brian Coombs, who was one of their most used relievers last year, 41 innings over 17 appearances, also made 2 starts. He'll probably make the jump into the rotation. And Jake Hembry, who's going to be a redshirt sophomore this year, he had a pretty solid freshman campaign in terms of appearances. He appeared in 16 games, made 10 starts, a 6.8 ERA, 59 strikeouts over 45 innings. That's a guy that you kind of are going to end up leaning on, inexperience as a freshman in his first year playing. I think he's going to take a nice little jump here. And on offense, it's the same thing. They lose a decent amount of pieces, especially at the top. They lose their OPS leaders. They lose their stolen base leaders, but they bring back Wills McGinnis and catcher Carter Bailey. I'm a firm believer when teams bring back their catcher, especially when they start 50 of 55 games, that only helps both sides of the ball, especially when we're talking about a pitching staff that is replacing a lot. I think they're going to be frisky in some series here. I don't know what the full season is going to look like, but I'm kind of excited. I think this could be a decent team. They were 26-30 last year. They struggled in conference really bad. We talked about Old Dominion. They were actually a 500 team in Sun Belt play last year, but 11-19 in the Sun Belt. So I'm going to be curious to see what they can put together, especially when you lose your top 3 offensive producers.
Yeah. And we're sticking in the state of Georgia. We're moving on to Georgia Southern. This is a team that pulled together a 28-31 record last year, 13-17 in conference. Dominated at home. They were 20-11 at home, but when they went on the road, it was not pretty. Went 7-17 on the road last year. Another program that's kind of hovered around that 500 mark over the last few years in the Sun Belt. Last year they won in 2024 they won 33 games, so they've had a winning record of recent. But they've had a coach there in Rodney Heenan who's been there for a very long time. He's got a 903 and 602 record overall in 26 seasons. 24 of those seasons have been with Georgia Southern, where he's 822 and 564. He's been coach of the year both in 2000 and 2001. So historic coach who's been around in the game for a very long time, and he's been at Georgia Southern because he's been able to win ball games. And so, again, this is a team that'll be interesting to see if they can kind of take that next step in the Sun Belt. I think they had a lot of their success when they're in the Southern Conference, but one guy to take a look at on the hitting side and pay attention to, you talked about catchers returning, is catcher first baseman Sean White, who's a senior this year as a redshirt senior. So has lots of college experience. Last year slash 288, 379, 450 with 5 doubles, 8 home runs, and 44 RBIs. So expect him to kind of play a big role for them next year. And yeah, Georgia Southern, I think it's going to be a team to watch. They probably will still hover around that 500, but I'm sure they're going to want to put together a better conference record than 13-7 and maybe get over that hump and maybe have over 500 record in conference. That gets us to, we're back to me. Or you want to go, Will, here in App State?
I can go with App State. App State last year, a 23-31 record, 13-17 in the conference. They're returning 2 huge bats. Joseph Zamora is probably going to be their best offensive player. He started 52 games last year, 34 RBI. He's slugged 395, 5 stolen bases. I think he's just kind of that true bat-to-ball guy at the top of the order. He's going to set the table a lot. He's going to drive in a good chunk of runs. But they also bring back their OPS leader in Cameron Miller, first baseman, a 1.028 OPS last year in 47 starts, 50 RBI, 12 home runs, was second on the team in both of those. That's a guy that you really lean on. He's going to be the force in the middle of the lineup. And I honestly, he's going to end up being one of the better hitters in the Sun Belt again in his next year. The pitching side is where I have some really big concerns for App State. They lose their top 7 innings arms, and it's really tough to replace that. You're looking at replacing your top bullpen arm in Bradley Wilson, your top starter in Caleb Cross. You're replacing more starters in Liam Best and Cal Clark. It's really tough when you start doing that. Or Cal Clark is back, excuse me. He's their one starter that is coming back. He only threw 24 innings last year with 14 appearances, but they are replacing so much on the pitching side that I have no idea what to expect. This is when it gets really hard to predict these smaller schools, is that when they lose so much from the previous year and so many guys that threw significant innings, it's like you don't know where that's going to come from again. And again, this is a team that was sub 500. So I honestly, I think they're going to end up taking a small step back this year. I think they're going to hover right around that 13 and 17, 11 and 19 mark in conference, but there are some really fun pieces on offense. And I think that ends up getting them a couple of wins in the conference series that maybe they wouldn't get otherwise.
Yeah. And like you said, like trying to figure out what pieces are going to fall into place at these smaller schools is really difficult, especially like newcomers and freshmen. And even at like the SEC, ACC level, like knowing if a freshman's going to have an impact or not is really hard to tell unless they're like a Derek Curiel at LSU. So I think a lot of these teams, like even if they have freshmen coming into campus, like trying to figure out like what kind of role those kids are going to play, it's hard. You don't know how they're going to adapt when they start seeing pitching for the first time at the collegiate level. I am moving on to Arkansas State. And this is a team I actually covered in our article, the conference preview. So we highlighted a few teams that we wanted to give some extra acknowledgement to, and just as teams you should watch within this conference. And often you're not writing up a 14 and 16 in conference team that went 26 and 28 like Arkansas State did. But this is a program that Mike Silva took over this last year. And they also have the school investing in the program as well. So they announced plans to move forward on a transformative 40,000 square foot player development center that's going to have turf infield, batting cages, pitching tunnels, weight rooms. So programs like the school's heavily investing in the program, in the baseball program. And so I expect you're going to see a lot from the Razorbacks here, Arkansas State here in the future. Wrong Arkansas. I think the biggest name you should be watching out for is Patrick Ingskov. Ingskov is a returner here for the Red Wolves who hit 13 doubles, 9 home runs, drove in 35, had a slash line of 318, 371. Drove in 35 runs. So I think he's a guy that you should definitely keep an eye on. Was their shortstop, should be in that role again. And Austin Quiller is another guy to pay attention to. He's the one that slashed 318, 371, 479 with 12 doubles, 5 triples, 3 home runs, and 30 RBI as a freshman. So talk about those freshmen having an impact. Austin Quiller was one of them to do that. And I think having those two guys back, that's like a pretty good core you can kind of build around. And they brought in a couple other guys to kind of pay attention to in the portal for like Evan Griffiths from Stenson and Cougar Cook out of Utah Valley. So just really pay attention to this team because I really think they can make some noise here in 2026.
Yeah, and to your point, there's nothing more exciting for our game than hearing a team that is, been a sub 500 team pouring money into baseball. And we're going to get into another team in this conference as well that is putting a lot of money into their baseball facilities, which just fires me up. I mean, these are teams that end up winning recruiting competitions within conference. We talk about a lot of these top players that are leaving within conference. That's going to help these schools retain these guys that are really solid, and it's just going to get those teams better. It makes for this conference being, instead of 5 teams deep on a given year, like 5 really good teams, it ends up being 7 or 8, and I think that's when it starts to get even more fun, which is why we continue to label this as a P5 conference. While maybe the facilities up and down the board aren't quite there, I think we're trending in the right direction, which is really exciting.
Yep, I agree.
Next up, we're going to jump to South Alabama, the Jaguars. They finished 23 and 28 last year, 12 and 18 in the conference. I'm actually kind of excited about this team. They're returning 4 pieces on offense from the starting lineup last year. They're returning 2 of their rotation guys, most notably on offense, Duncan Matthews and Rhett Johnson, both of which started 40-plus games. Duncan hit 2 bombs last year, 28 RBIs with a 902 OPS. And Rhett Johnson had 23 RBIs, 8 doubles with a 439 slug. On the pitching side, this is where it's going to get pretty exciting if you're South Alabama. You bring back two of your main starters. Mitchell here, who made 9 starts and 12 appearances last year, 66 innings, 39 strikeouts, kept hitters to a 242 average. And you bring back Jackson Shineflew, who started the back half of the year, 6 starts, 15 appearances, 56 innings with 59 strikeouts. When you're able to return a handful of pieces of guys that you can lean on in the rotation and you know that they're going to compete. Mitchell here went 7-2 last year. For a team that only had 23 wins and he is recording wins in almost a third of your games or a third of your wins, that's really big for this. And he put up a 3.53 ERA last year. So he's going to be another really good arm. I think Jackson Shineflew takes another step forward. He had a 4.5 ERA last year with a 3-4 record. He's probably going to take another good step. So I actually think South Alabama is going to be closer to that 500 in conference mark. They were 12-18 last year. I'm expecting closer to 15-15, maybe even a plus record in conference.
Yeah, I love it. I think it seems going to be really exciting to watch this year. I get to dive into a less exciting team here, and ULM. This is a roster that was very much purged through the transfer portal. They don't bring back Daniel Gonzalez, I don't believe, who was a right-hander, put up pretty good numbers for them. Brennan Eager, who was their top freshman last year, pitched 54 and 2/3 innings and posted a 3.79 ERA. He's also gone. He transfers to Cincinnati. And then on the hitting side, I believe they lost a lot of guys, not necessarily to the portal, but just because of age. They graduated, and so they're going to have a lot of pieces to replace. But one guy to kind of pay attention to is Bryce Blazer, who now goes into his senior year, outfielder for ULM. Slash 280, 373, 381 with 13 doubles, 2 home runs, 25 RBIs, 7 stolen bases. One of the key returners they have will likely be a leader in that locker room, just given the experience he has with the program. ULM's just kind of a program that struggled within the Sun Belt. Last year, they were able to pull off a 15-15 record, but overall, in the season, they went they went a 15-15 home record. They were 8-22 in the conference, so did not pull off a good season, but they were 22-33 overall, so not great. And I believe the year before that, they only won 25 games. So ULM's kind of really struggled, and then now looking at 2023, they only won 17 games. So ULM's just one of those programs that's kind of struggled through the Sun Belt. I think the expectations are unfortunately going to be probably fairly similar, given how much their good players were taken by other schools. So yeah, there's not much really to add on ULM here.
Yeah, I'm going to dive in here to who has kind of become my Sun Belt darling in the Texas State Bobcats. Steven Trout, he's going to enter his 6th season as head coach, but the rest of the coaching staff is fairly new. Josh Blakely, who's one of their assistant coaches, they brought him in this year to handle a lot of the recruiting stuff, specifically on the offensive side. Coach Danny David Linehan is in his 2nd year with the program after spending the better part of 5 or 6 years with both the Guardians and the Dodgers and the Twins. So when you're bringing guys that historically are in really good positions, like Coach Linehan was an offensive mind with some of the best developing pro teams in the entire MLB, that's got to get you fired up for what this team can do moving forward. They were 27-31 last year, and just a really fascinating team to me. I mean, they had 3 top 25 wins, including wins over number 1 Texas A&M at the time and number 1 Texas at the time. And then they notched another win in Arlington against Oklahoma State when they were in the top 20 as well. Despite finishing 14-16, they are bringing back a good chunk of returners, which I think you have to be really excited about as well. Shortstop Chase Mora is back. He put up an 834 OPS. Rashawn Galloway has been really their best offensive producer through the fall. It's a guy that everybody in that camp is super excited about. He's a utility man. He broke his hamate bone 15 games into the season last year, so he missed almost the entire year. He's one of those guys that I think is just set up to have a monster year. They're really excited about him in camp. Coy DeFury is also back. Same with Ethan Ferris. And those are guys. Ethan Ferris has put up some big power numbers in the fall. He's big frame, big pop. And he's one of those guys I think that if he slots in the middle of the order, it's going to be really good for them. And they've done a lot of recruiting in terms of high school and junior college. So they haven't put together a lot of Division I guys coming over outside of Jacquay Stewart from Texas, who they ended up getting in the portal. But a lot of the guys are junior college guys. A lot of the guys are going to be shortstop, or not shortstops. A lot of the guys are going to be high school guys coming in. And it's a talented freshman group, but I think it's one of those things where It's how are they going to adjust once they hit the college game? When you have a lot of guys that don't have D1 experience, and the coaches have admitted that themselves, like they don't have a lot of Division I experience, but it's a team that we saw what they did last year, and they were really frisky last year. They suffered a lot of injuries on both sides of the ball through the season. But for what they bring back and what they're bringing in the junior college ranks, I think this is a team that should be on the radar as long as they can stay healthy again.
Yeah, I love that. I'm moving into Louisiana, which I'm actually excited to talk about this team, because this is a team that has historically produced a lot of major leaguers and has had a winning track record in the Sun Belt. Speaking of major leaguers, just being a Royals fan, we have Carson Roccaforte and LP Langevin, who are both from Louisiana, Lafayette. And it's just a program that's consistently produced good baseball players. Last year was kind of a down year for them overall. So they went 27-31. They were 16-14 in conference. So pulled off a winning record within the conference, just slightly above 500, but kind of a little bit lower than expectations. They won 42 games in 2024. So they were like at the top of this conference. And in 2023, they won 41. So this was kind of an off year for Louisiana Lafayette. I expect them to be back at the top. You look at this rotation, they return all three. All three threw over 60 innings last year. All three had 11, 12, and 13 starts for this Louisiana Lafayette team. Starts with J.R. Tollett, who posted a 3.51 ERA while striking out 63 batters in 77 innings. Got 6 wins for the team. Followed by Chase Morgan, who posted a 3.52 ERA in 13 starts with 74 strikeouts in 61 and a third innings. Then they bring back a grad student, Andrew Herman. He posted a 4.99 ERA, but had 12 starts for this team through 70 innings. So you bring like 3 workhorses on the mound who have tons of Sun Belt experience. They're going to kind of anchor this rotation for them coming into the 2026 season. And you have to be excited about that if you're the head coach. Offensive side, a little bit more questionable. Caleb Stelly transferred to Southern Miss, so they lose him. Connor Higgs, who was their top hitter, had 16 home runs, 46 RBIs. I believe he graduated or got drafted, so he's gone as well. Yeah, he's a redshirt senior, so he graduated. So going to have to replace some firepower on the offensive side, but that rotation is going to be stable. I'd expect them to win more than 16 games this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can't talk about the Sun Belt without talking about how electric that environment is. That the Teague is one of my not even just Sun Belt bucket list stadiums, just college baseball bucket list stadiums. That place is absolutely bonkers, especially when they get the LSUs to come into town. A super fun program, and another one of those schools that I feel like college baseball is better when Louisiana is better. And I think we're going to be trending in that direction as well.
Yeah, I agree. And that's going to transfer me into the next team, who I also think is starting to make waves in the Sun Belt, Marshall. Another team that I wrote about in our conference preview. So they went 16-14 as well in conference last year, posted a 33-26 record. Huge improvement from 2024 season where they went 18-37. Not great. So head coach Greg Meals took over that program in 23. Of course, usually when you have that first year under a head coach, you're going to get a season like that 18-37 sometimes, unless you're like a premier program who's got a history of recruiting and our premier program that has a history of winning. But they also, like Louisiana, have a very big strength, and they return their entire rotation. Griffin Miller, Bryce Blevins, Clint Moak, all returning. Miller was a preseason all-conference starter for us. He posted a 3.46 ERA last year, striking out 71 batters in 83 and a third innings. That guy's probably going to be your Friday night starter. Blevins and Moak didn't have the best numbers at all, but Blevins is a guy who posted a 3.45 ERA in his sophomore year, so expectation is that he can hopefully get back to those numbers in 2020 that he had in 2024. They're also bringing a bunch of experience in the bullpen as well. Charlie Krebs and Peyton Jackson, those are 2 guys to watch. Krebs posted a 2.92 ERA, logged 52 and a third innings, and Jackson posted a 3.55 ERA and 25 and a third. So arms are plenty for Marshall. I think they're going to have some depth on that mound. That's going to be really good for them. Offensive side, they took some massive blows. Eddie Leon graduated. Micah New transferred to Arkansas. That's a guy who's been a big transfer name that everybody's been paying attention to. They do return some key guys on the infield. First baseman AJ Harvilla and second baseman Tyler Kammerer. So both of those guys should kind of anchor this offense. They also brought in Ethan Murdoch, an Akron transfer, Evan Bodone. I don't even know how to pronounce that, but that should be rounding out their outfield. So they'll have some bats that can kind of hopefully fill the void of the guys that they lost. But I think this Marshall team's in for another 30-plus win season. I think they're going to go over 500. Will they be at the top of the Sun Belt with Coastal, Troy, and Southern Miss? Maybe. But I don't know if they're going to top those three teams.
Yeah, it's so funny when we do this conference preview because we're talking about teams that we believe are going to be at the top of the conference and were at the top of the conference last year. And they're kind of hovering around that 500 mark in Sun Belt play. And then when we get into the big three, I mean, it's just ridiculous what these teams have been able to accomplish. So having said that, we're going to jump into our first of the big three in Southern Miss, led by Christian Ostrander in his third year as head coach, his 9th season overall with the program. An unbelievable pitching mind. He's done ridiculous things with Southern Miss, and he's done ridiculous things since taking over a program that hasn't dropped below 40 wins since 2015. They've had 10 straight 40-plus win seasons. They won 47 last year, tying the program record, hosted their 4th regional ever in program history. Pete Taylor Park, again, one of the best environments in all of college baseball. We love the Golden Eagles. Just an unbelievable program. I can't say enough good things. Yes, they are going to be replacing some really, really big pieces, especially on offense. When you talk about it, they're going to lose their best offensive player from last year, Nick Moinister, who posted a 1.033 OPS, including a team-leading 21 home runs and 71 RBI. Ozzie Pratt is also gone. Jake Cook and Carson Paytower also out. However, they do bring back potential Sun Belt Player of the Year in Matthew Russo, who will play first base for them. Finished his 2025 campaign with a 970 OPS, 18 home runs, and 57 RBI. He's going to be the anchor in the middle of that order. Joey Urban is back, who put together 19 extra base hits. They're also going to bring back starting catcher Tucker Stockman. He produced 33 RBIs on offense, but managed the staff unbelievably well last year. Yes, on the pitching side, they do lose J.B. Middleton, who was arguably outside of Cam Flutie, the best mid-major arm in the country. He was ridiculous last year. You know, a couple guys at Coastal.
I might take Morrison.
Matthew Adams, who started 4 seasons for Southern Miss, also out. But they're going to bring back 2 lefties, 2 guys that had significant innings last year in Cross Sibley and Graydon Harris. Sibley posted a 4.14 ERA over 71 innings last year in 22 appearances, made 8 starts. He's likely going to be in the rotation. Harris made 15 starts last year. He'll likely be in the rotation again. He threw 58 1/3 innings to a 3.39 ERA. They also bring back their closer in Colby Allen, who recorded 12 saves last year in 67 innings over 29 appearances with 77 strikeouts. Opposing hitters hit only 214 against him. That's a huge piece of the bullpen that they're bringing back. Again, this is a team that I am never willing to doubt, given the historical winning that this team does. 10 straight seasons with 40-plus wins is unbelievable. And there's no reason for me to really think that they're going to take a significant step back. Even the pieces that they're bringing in out of the portal, Ostrander is going to be able to do really good things with them on the mound. And I think they bring more than enough on offense to compete for another host.
Yeah. And if you check one of our latest posts, you can see why Southern Miss fans are angry at us because we like Troy potentially better than Southern Miss. But I think it's hard, right? Because they lose so many pieces on the offensive side, like you mentioned. They lose J.B. Middleton, who is their ace Friday night guy. I think for me, Southern Miss will probably surpass Troy at some point, especially if Colby Allen, who's expected to make that transition into the rotation, succeeds. So I think that's kind of the big question mark for me is like, can Allen go into that rotation and dominate? I mean, when I saw his stuff in the Sun Belt tournament, I was like, this kid could be a starter. So I think that's going to be the big thing. And I think if Colby Allen does make that transition to the rotation, I think you're going to see Southern Miss up there 1-2 again with Coastal Carolina. Troy just, I think, returns more pieces that are a little bit interesting, which we can get into now if we want to. But Troy, we thought was arguably one of the biggest snubs of the 2025 postseason. They went 39-21, losing just one conference series to Southern Miss and finishing 18-12 in the Sun Belt Conference. So I think that's deserving of recognition. Will, I'll kind of turn it over to you on kind of what's returning here.
Yeah, and another program very historically good. Skylar Meade has done really, really good things 4 consecutive seasons with 32 plus wins, 3 consecutive seasons with 37 plus wins, while it's not a 10-year streak of 40 plus wins. Troy has kind of been the newcomer in the Sun Belt that is now really taken that step to be to be nationally recognized. They're going to bring back 6 starters on offense that made 37 or more starts from last year. They do lose a huge piece of the puzzle in Brooks Bryan, who was really highly regarded as a catcher last year, led the team in home runs with 12 and RBIs with 61. However, they're bringing back 2 players that I believe have a legitimate chance to win Sun Belt Player of the Year, one of which being senior outfielder Stephen Meyer. He's going to be a centerpiece of the offense. He slashed 300, 447, 507 with 16 doubles, 8 home runs, and 42 RBIs, while also swiping 24 bags. He also finished 6th in the country in hit by pitches. I got to sit down with Steven earlier in the offseason, and he just talked about, that Troy culture and how he fits it. And really, he embodies that I'm going to just wear a pitch. I'm going to find a way on base. I'm going to do whatever I can to help this team win. They're also going to bring back their first baseman, some thunder from down under in Blake Cavell. He posted a 1.07 OPS last year, 12 doubles, 11 home runs, 50 RBI, and finished 2nd in the country in walks with 64. And they're going to bring back more pieces. So I talked about Brooks Bryan being gone as a catcher. They're bringing back Jimmy Janicki, who made 51 starts as a true freshman last year. He's going to take over the catching duty largely this season. He posted a 280 batting average with 32 RBIs. He mostly played third base last year, but I have a feeling they're going to bump him back behind the dish and take over for Brooks Bryan now that he's been in the program. Also, Houston Markham takes another step. This kid has some crazy power. He only made 33 starts last year with 27 RBIs. But when you go back and you look at some of the home runs he hit from the 2025 season, I mean, this is a kid that has some serious pop. And if he can tap into it more consistently in the bat to ball department, he's going to be really, really good. And the pitching side is where is going to end up being some question marks for Troy. They're losing their top 6 innings contributors, including Noah Edders, who led the way with 14 starts, 65 innings, and 67 strikeouts. Lefty Drew Nelson is back. He made 8 starts last year, posting 33 innings. But they have so many innings to fill. They have a ton of innings to fill in 2026. And that ends up being a really big question mark, especially for mid-major teams. When you don't know where the innings are going to come from, I think that's when you start to question what can this team be at its ceiling. But the offense is going to be so good. I think they're going to carry them at least early on in the season. And when you talk to college coaches and you kind of understand the landscape, you realize that the bullpen pieces and, filling out spots, that stuff doesn't really get solidified until we're well into conference series. I mean, these early season tournaments, these early season games, so much of it is just figuring out who can perform in what role. So I think by the time we hit Sun Belt play, this team is going to be fully running.
Yeah. And I think you look at the portal that they went after arms. Blake Dean out of Kansas State, Tommy Egan out of UIC, Zach Crotchfeld out of Texas State, Cooper Ellingsworth out of USC Upstate, Tate Farquhar out of Michigan State. So they loaded up with a bunch of names. Now, will they succeed? Hard to say, but they went out and addressed the need that they obviously thought they needed. So it'll be interesting to see what they're able to do with that. But yeah, I think like you said, question marks on the mound. Offense is obviously going to be going at full swing. So can they eclipse that 40 games, get into a regional? I think it's easily possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to move on to the conference champ of last year, Coastal Carolina. Goes to the championship game in Omaha, loses our championship series in Omaha, loses 2 straight to LSU. LSU was a juggernaut. They had Cade Anderson and Anthony Ianson. Even though Coastal had Cam Fluke and Jacob Orson, you need offense to match the LSU offense, and they just didn't have it last year. But Coastal returns Cam Fluke. He's an electric arm. He might be one of the best, if not the best arm in the 2026 MLB draft. What do you like about this Coastal team?
Yeah, I mean, you have to like the offense, really. And it's funny that we just mentioned it. This isn't necessarily a historically – I feel like in the past we've always seen Coastal be a big bruising team and kind of struggle on the pitching side, whereas last year that completely flipped. They dominated on the mound, and it kind of felt like, okay, where is the power going to come from at the plate? Yeah. And now but they're not replacing a lot. I think Blake Barthol is a guy I'm really keeping my tabs on for 2026. He was one of my favorite second basemen after the 2024 season. And quite honestly, he had kind of a down year last year. He still had double-digit home runs. He's a guy I think gets back into what he should be and he's going to be the power threat of this offense. Obviously, yes, you lose the best defensive catcher in the country in Caden Bodine. That's a big piece to lose. Yes, you lose Jacob Morrison, you lose Riley Eichhoff, two of the best starters in mid-major baseball, but you have to love what pitching coach Matt Williams has been able to do with this staff specifically and the guys that they're bringing in. And I think you have some names listed as well, but one guy that I really want to talk about is Ross Norman, who's transferring in from in-conference. He's a guy that I've heard nothing but good things about through fall camp. He had a 7 ERA last year, but I think that's going to be completely wiped away being in that Coastal pitching lab. This is a program that's done unbelievable things in pitching development. And when you bring back, I believe, 7 offensive starters, you set yourself up for a really good season again. And I've heard good things about the power development of a guy like Dean Mijos, who was truly bat the ball last year. But this Coastal team is one that's just willing to do whatever it takes to find ways to scrape across runs. It's a really fun brand of baseball, and it gets you pretty far, as we saw in 2025.
Yeah, and I got to talk about the rotation gets all the love between Fluky, Hayden Johnson, and Ross Norman, but the bullpen is so nasty. The bullpen is extremely good. They bring back Dominic Carbone, Ryan Lynch, and Darren Horn. Lynch was a saves leader with 9 and posted an absurd 0.56 ERA, struck out 36 batters in 32 innings. Carbone was absolutely dominant on the pen as well. He posted a 2.36 ERA, struck out 52 batters in 42 innings. It's just like you have that dominance. Like we all know the importance of having starting pitching, but you still need someone to close out the game. And you have like that 3-headed monster just coming out and just dominating for them. They're going to be extremely good. They're the favorites to win the Sun Belt for a reason. I wouldn't be shocked if we see Coastal Carolina making a run towards Omaha again.
Yeah, absolutely. We didn't even mention Hayden Johnson, who was one of their key bullpen pieces in 2025, who's expected to take over rotation spot, who struck out 55 batters in 38 innings last year with a 2.82 ERA. So we may be seeing Coastal with another 3-headed monster. And it was funny last year because you had Jacob Morrison and Cam Fluky, who were so overpowering in terms of strikeout stuff. And you had Riley Eichhoff, who is a low 90s guy who did nothing but force hitters to beat the ball into the ground. And he posted a ridiculously good season last year. And it plays, right? They're finding different ways to develop pitching. They had one guy that was truly pitch to contact that felt like he had a rubber arm, could go out there and give you 6 really good innings no matter what the game called for. And I think this year we might see just a little bit different, but a 3-headed monster again in Fluky and Johnson and Ross Norman.
Yep, I agree. That does it for all the teams in the Sun Belt Conference. We are going to move over to player coach superlatives. So we are picking our player of the year in the Sun Belt. I'll let you kick this one off since I know you got a guy already picked here and locked in.
I do. And I kind of alluded to it earlier. It's going to be Troy outfielder, senior Stephen Meyer. Hit 300 last year, 447 and 507. He's one of those guys that just does it all. He doesn't specialize in anything, specifically. He dealt with injuries last year, which I think is part of the reason we only saw him with 8 home runs. I wouldn't be surprised to see him closer to the 20 double mark and, closer to 15 home runs. I think we're going to see him in double-digit bombs. Like I said, he's willing to get on base. He's going to steal a ton of bags again. I think he's going to be closer to 30 stolen bases this year. Really good bat-the-ball skills. Just a really fun player to watch. And for me, he's going to get my pick for player of the year.
Yeah, I think a guy that I'm looking at. So I picked Stephen Meyer as well. So I'm not going to jump on that bandwagon. But a couple of guys that I'm interested to kind of see how they do now that they've transferred to new schools. I think one is Kyle Morrison, who we kind of talked about earlier, was going from South Alabama to Southern Miss. Slash 294, 399, 521 with 13 doubles, 9 home runs, and 44 RBIs last year. I think he's a guy who could easily make a push for this player of the year. And then another guy that I'm looking at pretty closely who has kind of a similar profile to Stephen Meyer, but Jordan Taylor, who's going to Coastal Carolina. Guy who slashed 322, 359, 504 with 16 doubles, 8 home runs, 43 RBIs, and 22 stolen bases at Stetson last year. So I think he's another guy who could really make some noise for this player of the year. And then, of course, Matthew Russo out of Southern Miss. Another guy who's hit 18 home runs, 11 doubles, 57 RBIs. He's probably got to do a little bit more on like the batting average and then defensively, but I think he's a guy who could also make, if he puts up ridiculous, like he hits 25 plus home runs or 20 plus home runs, I think he's a guy who could easily be a player of the year in the Sun Belt.
Absolutely, yeah. And with that, we're going to jump over to our pitcher of the year for the Sun Belt Conference. Let's do the same thing. Let's make our pick, and then we can talk about some guys that I think are going to be up for the award as well, because I think both of us are going to be on the same page here. It's going to be Cam Fluke out of Coastal
Yeah.
Carolina, 101 and 2/3 innings last year, 118 punch outs to a 3.19 ERA. 24 walks in 101 innings. His freshman year, he had 27 walks in 55 innings. He was going from nearly one walk every other inning to one walk every 5 innings. I mean, this is a kid that's development has been unbelievable in just 1 year. And he's only going to be a junior this year. He was a true freshman in 2024. So he's a true junior this year. It's his draft year. I think he's the best pitcher in the country. I really do.
Yeah. I like it. I mean, I'm on the same boat. I really don't know who else you go with here. Just because it's like he's going to be like the number one pitcher in the 2026 MLB draft. He'd be the best pitcher in most conferences in college baseball.
Yes.
So
I've mentioned this before. I got a lot of hate on Twitter for saying that the Rays should take him at second overall, and people are like, that's too high. They would never. And I understand the Rays typically don't take college arms. This is a guy that legitimately could work his way into the top 3 picks, kind of like Cade Anderson last year. You know, it got down to the wire, and we really thought Cade was just going to be the slam dunk 1-1 for what he did. And I think Fluke has a better arsenal than what Cade did. And we saw him go toe-to-toe with him in Omaha against an LSU lineup that we said was absolutely loaded last year. He's done it against the best teams in the country. It's not just a mid-major arm putting up crazy numbers. He did it against every team in the country, including the national champions in LSU. There's no reason to believe that he's not going to take another step in the development.
Yep, I agree. I'll talk about another name, and then I'll turn it over to you if you got one. But the guy I mentioned with Marshall, Griffin Miller, posted a 3.46 ERA, 71 strikeouts in 83 and a third innings, went 7-4 last year. I think he is a guy who could make some noise for pitcher of the year. I don't think he's going to come anywhere close to Cam Fluke. That's not a knock on Griffin Miller. He's still a very good pitcher. It is just very hard to come close to Cam Fluke. But I think he's a guy who's going to be strong and steady for this Marshall rotation. I think he's going to pitch well again in the Sun Belt. But yeah, I think he's a name to watch. Maybe he gets better. Maybe he posts lower than a 3.46 ERA going into this next year. But just someone who's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got another one of those. It's Cross Sibley from Southern Miss. I think he's going to take another step. He's been a real anchor for them over 3 seasons at Southern Miss. Last year, he went 7-1 on the mound in 8 starts, 22 appearances, a 4.14 ERA, 58 strikeouts, and 20 walks, a 1.298 WHIP. He's a guy I think is really going to lead that Southern Miss pitching staff. Really excited again. Again, it kind of not a knock on him, not a knock at Southern Miss and what Coach Ostrander's been able to do in terms of pitching development, but I just don't think anyone in the conference, even on Coastal for that matter, is going to touch what Cam Fluke is going to be able to do in 2026. But there's a handful of really interesting names that I think are going to be really fun to watch throughout the season.
Yep, I love it. We're going to move on to Breakout Star or Freshman for 2026.
Yeah, I'm going to go Breakout Star here. I mentioned him a little bit. It's going to be utility man Rashawn Galloway out of Texas State. I've heard nothing but good things out of camp. He had the best fall of anybody on the Bobcats in 2025. He's a senior this year, so it's more of the Breakout Star. I think he's going to be a guy that if he performs the way that he absolutely can, and he's fully healed from his injury last year, breaking a bone, I think he's just going to have a monster year, and he's going to be the leader of this offense, and it's going to be the reason why Texas State ends up taking another big jump in terms of their record.
Yep, I agree. I was going to go with a freshman because I'm going to give credit where credit's due, but I read D1 Baseball's fall report on Troy. Southern Miss fans are going to hate it because we're talking about another Troy person. But Brady Richardson, a two-way guy, infielder, right-handed pitcher. D1 Baseball talked about how he's a high slot right-hander, has 91 and 92 with the fastball, big curveball, 76 to 78. Potentially going to be a weapon for them in the bullpen. And they also mentioned that he can play shortstop in a number of spots. So he's a 6'5" runner with a 65-70 grade arm. The D1 Baseball said that Meade was calling him a wild card because of his unique talent. So if he forces his way onto the field, and he gets everyday playing time as a position player and comes out of the bullpen out of Troy, I feel like that could be your potential freshman of the year in the Sun Belt Conference. So keep an eye out on that kid. That was the one thing that really kind of to hit my head when I starting to read about Troy a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that pick. And we're going to jump into transfer of the year here. I'm going to go back to Southern Miss. We're really ending up in just a battle of guys from Southern Miss and Troy here. I'm sure those fan bases will love this, but I'm going to go with Kyle Morrison, transferring from South Alabama. Slashed 294, 399, 521 last year with 9 home runs and 44 RBI. Heard he's had a solid fall camp. I think he's going to be a guy that not only is going to make an immediate impact, but an immediately large impact. And he's a guy that he didn't even lead South Alabama in offensive categories. He was kind of buried when you go look at their stats from 2025. He was kind of halfway down in that lineup in terms of production. But I think he's really going to thrive at Southern Miss. I think this is a guy that's going to take over the infield and just be a ridiculously good player for them. I saw some highlights of him in the fall and really excited for what he can bring in 2026.
Yeah, I'm going to go for this on the pitching side and pick a guy that you already mentioned in Ross Norman out of Coastal Carolina. He posted an 8.03 ERA, I think, over his 102 career innings with Georgia State. But give me Matt Williams any day, developing arms. Like, if he's going to be in that rotation and Matt Williams is going to help him take that next step, like, I'm excited to see if he can break out and be maybe like a Jacob Morrison type, or be maybe not to a Cam Flukie level. Like, Cam Flukie stuff is ridiculous, but see if you can harness that 96-mile-an-hour heater that he's got and actually to dominate people in this conference. So I'm looking at Ross Norman. I think he has a chance to be the transfer of the year.
I love that pick too. He's very high up on my list, and we'll get into coach of the year here. This is kind of a tough one because we know how hard it is to repeat success, and we understand how hard it is to get back to Omaha, let alone a national title run. And every single time I'm looking up and down mid-majors, my eyes just head towards Kevin Schnall's ball club. And with what they return and what they brought in and some of the development that it's going on behind the scenes, I think it's really hard to not pick Kevin Schnall again in what will be his second year at Coastal Carolina. Can you imagine if in his first 2 seasons as head coach, not only he gets to Omaha, but they get to a national title? I mean, I could see it happening, and that's the thing. And I'm really excited to watch Coastal again this year. Give me Kevin Schnall.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be in the same boat, Schnall.
Yeah.
Like, he got that big extension. The entire coaching staff got that big extension for a reason. I'll take Kevin Schnall any day, all day. I mean, like you mentioned, like Christian Ostrander from Southern Miss, Skylar Meade, bunch of other guys will probably be up for that consideration as well, depending on how the season plays out. But yeah, I'll take Schnall again as well.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% with you.
Dark horse team not in the top 3.
I'm going to beat a dead horse again. Give me Texas State. It's a little bit biased. I think this team is going to be really fun. And again, it's a little bit tricky when you have the question marks in terms of lack of Division I experience. But I'm really excited for what this team can do. And I think they're really excited as a coaching staff. And I think you have to understand that this is a team that consistently challenged P5 and top 25 teams, consistently injured last year. A lot of their guys that are coming back, especially in guys like shortstop Chase Mora, he missed a lot of time last year with injury. They had a lot of guys that missed some time. I think there's some interesting pieces for them to figure out on the pitching side. But, man, if there's a team I think is going to make a huge jump this year, I think it's going to be Texas State.
Yeah, and I'm going to stick with Arkansas State just because of everything we talked about, the investment that they're putting into their program, the arms that they return to this rotation. I think they're a team that could bounce Marshall out of that 4th spot. I think Marshall was in the 4th spot last year. They have a really good head coach who's invested in this program and is ready for them to succeed. So I'm going to take Arkansas State, and I think when they return a guy like Patrick Ingskoff on the shortstop, who he's our preseason all-conference shortstop, they return a couple of other players key on the position side, and then bringing back that rotation. Like, I think they're going to make more noise than people expect.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that pick. That's a true dark horse right there. I'm all for that. I think at the end of the day, we have to acknowledge how good this conference is getting as a whole. I think it's always been known as a really top-heavy conference. And now that we're getting to the point, like to your point, Arkansas State about to take that big jump. I think there's some other teams that have kind of been buried within this conference, i.e. Marshall and Texas State. And we got Louisiana that I think is on the up and up again to be back to what they were. I think we're about to see this conference, maybe not this year, but in a couple of years, be 7 teams deep. And again, it's going to put a lot of pressure on the committee to start understanding that, like, this is as close to P5 without P5 as you can get. if not already. I mean, when we talk about this conference being P5, we kind of compare them with the Big Ten, right? And that's kind of the bar that we set in terms of, okay, it might be a little bit top heavy, but those mid-tier teams, I think a lot of these mid-tier teams are better than what they see in the Big Ten. And
Yeah.
I think they have to get credit in terms of getting more teams into the tournament. I know last year Troy missed out. They probably shouldn't have, but I think we're going to start turning that corner where, yes, we're going to see the Sun Belt continually get multiple hosts, but now we're going to start seeing them get 3, 4, 5 teams into the tournament in the field of 64 in general.
Yeah. My dream of dreams is that Sun Belt and American Conference would combine, and you'd have like UTSA, Charlotte, East Carolina, Tulane, like all these
that would
teams.
Be so fun.
Yeah, and then combine them with like Troy, Louisiana, Southern Miss. Like that would be a Power 5 baseball conference easily.
Not even close. Yeah, that'd probably be the third best conference in the entire country.
Yeah. I love it. We love giving the I guess the mid majors, as we call them, some love. It's been awesome talking about the Sun Belt. I'm excited to see what they can do this year. The best environment that I went to last year was the Sun Belt Conference Championship, and I was down there for the SEC and Sun Belt. Like I saw Southern Miss play. The fans just showed out. Coastal Carolina fans just showed out. Like it was an awesome environment, and they were playing at a minor league baseball stadium for the Sun Belt Conference Championship in Alabama. All these fans still showed up to support the team. Like Sun Belt baseball is thriving, and it's going to be good again next year, and I'm ready for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that does it for us. That wraps up the Sun Belt preview. We'll be back again later this week with a Big Ten preview for you as well. Week after that, we actually have our top 25 dropping, and then we'll get into the rest of the conferences, so Big 12, ACC, SEC, but tons of content coming your way. We got so much in the works for this 2026 college baseball season. Last year was just the beginning. We're super excited to grow this and see what it can kind of build into. But until next time, we'll see you.